What do you do strategically today? Do you buy industrials? Do you buy America? Do you go long straw hats and winter and buy the Philippines? Which is it?
Well, I don't think you rush out to do anything. I mean, right now the market's up a little bit, but we'll see. I think down the road what the market's telling you is energy prices are low. I think they're going to be low for a while, especially now with Republicans in the majority. I think that's a fantastic tailwind. We've talked about it for the consumer, but for industrials as well. 60% of GDP is consumer driven. You go to the pump, you see oil's 30% less.
How much of that is priced in, though?
I don't think that much of it is priced in, especially if you look at consumer discretionary stocks and you look at retail stocks. They've all been beaten down for this year. But, you know, I think what you're really going to look at is how can companies grow their top line, and that's the companies you want to invest in.
I failed this morning. Gold is $11.44, down $24.
It's that strong
Folks,
dollar.
I'll be honest. I missed some things. I mean, with my entourage that I have, I missed things. I failed
to move the bullion out of your closet.
The Krugerrands. I got Krugerrands in my drawer.
In a bag underneath the shoes.
Tom, that's the fear factor, right? The fear factor of people running to go buy gold and have every other commodity price go through the roof. You're seeing the opposite of that right now.
Unbelievable.
Sarat Sethi, you say that a lot of GDP is consumer-driven, and one of the big factors in the election last night that we've been talking about for the last weeks is the utter inability of median income to climb. Right. It's been stagnant for, we've got a chart here. It's the kitchen table. It's not the economy. It's sort of it's cash flow to households on a month-to-month basis. We know the effect that has had on politics. When does that start to affect the S&P 500?
Well, I think the way consumption works is, and very similar to inflation, is you project it out to the future. So the American consumer is very much about what am I going to earn down the road, not what's in my bank account. Hence why we have savings as being so low. So that, if you expand that, that's where you get better earnings projections. But if that doesn't happen, then you're going to see a nice pullback.
Well, to Brendan's point, better earnings projections, but at the same time, all these announcements from different companies that they're laying off workers. Office Depot with more than 1,000 workers. Right. Yesterday, Time Warner going to fire 1,000 workers at Warner Brothers. That's what people talk about at the kitchen table, even as we see these profit margins peak.
But you do see other companies hiring. So what you're seeing is, and we've talked about this before, is if you have a skill set, that's where you're going to get the hiring and the higher wages. And I think you're going to have to see more of a transformation of the workforce to higher paying wages as well.
Stanley Collender, does that make this an election unlike other elections? I know I keep coming back to politics, but if the economy, there was this question, the economy's doing really well, why isn't Barack Obama more popular? Is the answer median wages?
Well, it's that. It's also, I'm going to use one of your words, it's a change in the economic paradigm. We've got demographics. I
use the word paradigm?
No, but it's one of you would use.
I should be fired for that, but continue.
Right. You could use it if you were doing a crossword puzzle. But you've got the demographics changing. You've got workers leaving the workforce and not coming back because they're of an age. And so a lot of the things that we've come to expect the economy to do when it gets better, it's not going to do in the same way. In addition, a lot of people are comparing it to when we had the artificial boom of the late 90s.
Does Republican policy then have to adjust? I mean, cut taxes, remove regulations, those are ways to get the GDP up, but that may not do it anymore.
Well, look, you can't take what was said last night about working for the middle class at face value. That was election year rhetoric at the end of the election, and it was the beginning of the 2016 campaign.
I was drunk. I was hitting on you. I'm not responsible for those things I said.
Which Ronald Reagan won last night?
That's a good question, because he wouldn't fit into the Republican Party right now in the way it was, in the way it is now. And in fact, he'd probably be drummed out in many ways. But you'd need to have something of his earlier tax cuts, where you actually cut taxes for the lower levels.
Yeah, but you're our fiscal expert here. The president, at the minimum, gets a massive victory lap for closing our immediate deficit. Well, no one cares, right?
Well, he doesn't get the victory lap because a lot of people don't think it's a victory. The deficit, just to put it in context, was $483 billion last year. Is that big or is it small? Well, it's small compared to the $1.4 trillion it was in 2009, but to a lot of people, $483 billion is a lot of money, even though it's 2.8% of GDP.
And I think you have to make something a priority in order to take credit for it. You know, he did not make deficit reduction a priority, so it almost seems like an accident.
Well, and you've got to be able to communicate, and he's not. He may be a great orator, but he's not a good communicator. He doesn't relate to the audience, and the audience doesn't relate to him.
Right, and I think also the Republicans made the economy important. which for the last 6 years hasn't really been that important. It was more getting other things done. I'm not saying they weren't good things to get done, but when you focus on the economy and you focus on middle America and say, you know what, we got to look at you. Yes, the rest of the world is doing, the 1% is doing fine. I think that actually hit home.
Sarat, I have a question. We're 3 weeks out from the turmoil of October 15th. What are the lessons learned from that? Is the growth scare over?
Well, I think everybody was predicting this 10% correction as soon as you saw one hint of it, and you had a combination of factors with Ebola hitting, and people didn't know what was going on. You had a couple of earnings announcements, so some bellwether companies that said,
IBM,
hey,
McDonald's.
And then all of a sudden people said, you know what, we're not sure that this is the growth that we've had for the last 3 years. Let's sell first, book in your profit.